Okay, so that is a bit of the musical background on Janelle Monáe, but I want to talk about Dirty Computer, and there are a lot of ways we could talk about this, and hopefully a lot of ways that we will talk about this in class. We can talk about it in terms of music. We can talk about it in terms of gender and of race. There's a lot. There's a lot there. But I want to treat it the way it presents itself, and I want to treat it as a sci-fi text. So let's do that. All right. So I mentioned that in on previous albums, Janelle Monáe uses a sort of persona, an android persona. She's not doing that here, and in fact, the backstory here suggests a shift, and the shift isn't in tech. It's not that people have had tech installed and that they've become android, cyborg, whatever. It's a perceptual shift. It's not that we have become computers. It's they started calling us computers, and it happens to everybody. So that's an interesting move, and it's an interesting shift, and it's something that we can talk about because it moves us sort of post hybridity. It moves us through into a sort of post human or transhuman moment without actually incorporating tech. But it's this idea that we just decide to like start treating each other, or the state starts treating us as as computers. So at the point that this story takes place, all identity is understood as socially constructed, and thus as a potential site for state control, a potential locus or location for control by what I think we're supposed to presume is the state. And we should acknowledge there's kind of a Handmaid's Tale vibe here, definitely in the aesthetics. It's a little more techy looking, but it looks there's a sort of puritanism, um, particularly around sexuality, that seems to me to be evoking Handmaid's Tale. Um, the mechanism of control. So in because Handmaid's Tale is something that this is, I think, in conversation with. There are other texts that this is referencing THX 138, which is George Lucas's first movie. It's like his student film before Star Wars. It's basically all like in a white room and everybody's dressed in white. It's thematically similar to this. This is also referencing a lot of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which is a film by Michel Gondry. It's got Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet in it, and it is about a company that will remove your memories for you. And in that one, it's post breakup. This guy wants his ex girlfriend sort of removed, and the idea is that you may be able to do that. So the mechanism of control, as opposed to Handmaid's Tale, where it's a really like traditionally oppressive control, where you're doing like almost a cult programming kind of thing. The mechanism for control is this simplified computer analogous conception of how memory and personality interact. And the idea is that you can cure people of dirtiness, of deviance, by removing their memories. And this, I think this is invoking, I think this is evoking, I always get this confused. I think this is bringing in the idea of gay conversion therapy, but that's a whole other thing, and that's more a sort of Ludovico technique, like aversion. Like you're not trying to wipe a person's memories out. It's that that's actually about creating new memories. Um, but here, yeah, the idea is that they're going to wipe out Jane's memories, and without those memories of specific instances of experiencing like let's use the language they might of dirtiness, of sexual deviance, that without those experiences she will like be brought to the light, that she'll be clean. um, Note that this is not even the way that we clean out a computer, that you don't just wipe the memory, you wipe other stuff. But if as we're watching, the narrative immediately begins to trouble this, and make it more complicated. And what we see are that memories are inseparable from desires and dreams. They're not the cause of them, which is what the sort of oppressive state seems to think. Memories don't create desires; memories are imbued with desires. They're sort of they're not just recordings of what has happened to us. They're sort of shot through and threaded with what we want, what we dream of, where we are now. And anytime we access a memory, we're accessing it like through a particular lens. This is something to think about. This is a bit of an aside, but in fiction writing, this is why like point of view and where you're telling the story from becomes really critical, because it changes everything. It changes the way we reflect on events. So memory is not simply the record of experience. It is not the root of desire. It's something vastly more complicated. And what this says, this goes back to this idea. This goes back to this idea of hybridity. I am neither this nor that. I am not the sum of my experiences. I am not simply my desires. I'm all of those things. Is kind of the basic idea of this, and that dialectic, that combination of experience, desire, biology, physicality, cultural construct, none of these are separable. I'm I'm sorry, I'm going to be doing this for like the whole lecture set and probably most of our class meeting. But the thing about the dialectic is that it actually, once it forms, it can't be reduced back to its constituent parts. Like the dialectic is a whole. It's a contradictory whole. And the failure of the oppressive state apparatus is, and this is going to be really interesting to think about in terms of how Janelle Monáe works as a performer. The failure of the state apparatus comes from this attempt, or this assumption that it can successfully make this reductive move, that it can look at memory as memory. And you watch the text saying this a couple times, like, well, I don't know what this is. Is this a dream? Is this a memory? And the guy's like, no, it's just a memory, so get rid of it. But because it's not a memory, because it's not able to be reduced, it can't be gotten rid of. And then what we see is the way out ultimately is performance. It's masking, and it is a play at compliance, and ultimately that is how Jane and Zen escape, is by putting on this act of compliance. And this is a really like sort of classic trope in post-colonial thinking, is that performance can be revolutionary. That performance, even performance of compliance, can be a revolutionary act. And certainly with Janelle Monáe, with someone who is interested in putting on personas, in putting on figuratively, and in this case, literally masks, that is something that she views as sort of revolutionary practice or praxis. So that's it. That's sort of my early take on this video as a movie, as a sci-fi text. And we'll have more to say in class about a whole lot of it, but we want to put that out. And I'm going to talk a bit about Binti, and then we'll be done, and we'll talk more in class.